Good afternoon, and welcome to another installment of our ongoing Nonprofit Leadership and Engagement series. I am Joanne Nazer, Manager of Nonprofit Leadership and Engagement at the Washington County Community Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn from our content experts on intern rules and regulations. Thanks to Kathy Sable and Stacy Till from the Washington County Bar Association for supporting this webinar, since it is a law school for nonprofits session as well. We have a robust panel today to discuss this important issue. It is my pleasure to introduce attorney Rebecca Bowman, who is an expert on the subject of interns. Thanks so much, Rebecca, for being with us.
It's my pleasure. We're going to be focusing on the relationships among employers, educational institutions, and students. So this might be student interns and co-ops, because we're going to be looking at both sets. The first governing issue for us to take a look at is the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the important question here is, are interns and students employees to whom a for-profit employer must pay wages? There are special rules for nonprofits and for state and local government where there's a clear understanding that a person is volunteering their services. But we're going to look particularly at for-profits who have to decide whether the person in question is an employee to whom wages must be paid. So the first question is the person, the intern, co-op, student, whatever, have any expectation of receiving wages or a post-internship or post-co-op job? So you want the person to not have any such expectations if you're not going to pay them. So you need, as a potential employer, to be really, really, really clear if you're not going to pay. If you use a word like wage or hourly rate or 1099 or W-2, anything that doesn't suggest income, you've crossed that line. Number two, the training that the person is receiving in your workplace has to align or be equivalent to the training that person would receive in an educational setting, like a career and technology center or a clinical laboratory program at a college. Number three, it has to be tied to either formal coursework or the requirements to obtain credit if it's going to be an internship through an educational institution. Number four, the work schedule has to accommodate the intern's academic schedule. So for example, if the intern needs to be in class in the morning and is available to come work in your workplace in the afternoon, you can't say, and by the way, we need you Tuesday and Thursday mornings. That interferes with the person's academic schedule. Number five, the duration of the relationship has to be tied to the intern's beneficial learning. So for example, if you bring an intern on or a co-op and you give them a particular task to complete and they complete it a little faster than you expected, and you go, oh, well, I really didn't have anything else planned for you, so go over here in the corner and read these training manuals. Now, I can give you a firsthand demonstration of that. My son had a co-op at a facility in Blairsville, and they asked him to organize the tool room and do a complete inventory. And that was appropriate to the coursework that he was doing. That part was fine. They expected that task to last the entire summer. Well, he's my son, so it took a week. And then they're kind of going, what do we do with you for the rest of the summer? Well, actually, that turned out to be phenomenally wonderful. They asked him to write a standard for a material they used in the plant. And he got to write that standard. It was published, and it is now an official part of their operating procedures. Now, that is bang on what a co-op should be doing. The first task was of too short a duration to meet that number 5 standard. And number 6, and this is more related to the employer's end of things, the work must complement but not displace employees at the same time that it benefits the intern educationally. So if you can meet those requirements, then you might be in a situation where you must pay wages, or you may be in a situation where you can accept the person as a volunteer or pay a very low wage. Okay, so I've used the terms internship and co-op, which, by the way, is short for cooperative education. So let's take a look at what the differences are, because there are differences. First of all, an internship is short. It may be a couple hours a week, it may be for a month, but it's relatively short. A co-op is going to be an assignment that goes for a full summer, a full semester, or occasionally a full school year. It's not piecemeal. Daily, the internship is typically part-time. There are full-time internships, especially in summers. They're typically part-time, whereas a co-op is almost always full-time. So the student is removed from the educational setting while they're serving in this work experience. From an integration standpoint, in an internship, you may assign to an intern a small scale project expected to take the full duration of this short-term assignment. Not what my son had. A co-op, on the other hand, has actual work experience that is coordinated with the educational institution and aligned with the material being covered in the classroom. Salary. Internships may get minimum wage or no wage. We talked about expectations, whereas a co-op is typically paid an entry-level wage or something close to it. Now, what's in it for the employer? Well, let's look at the future. With an internship, there may be no future relationship. That may be a one-off. You come in, you do this project, you get to put it on your resume, and we're done. A co-op, on the other hand, has potential huge benefits for the employer. There is a tremendous work shortage of skilled workers, and the co-op can provide you with a pipeline of potential future employees whom you have pre-vetted. You know whether they show up to work. You know whether they have a good work ethic. So that's a really huge benefit. Trade-off is you need to make sure that the co-op has a supportive supervisor, they're quickly plugged into the team, and they become a part of the organization for the time that they're there. For the student, a co-op is a way to offset some student debt. It's great experience for a resume. And back that for networking purposes, it works both ways. That benefits the employer, networking with students, benefits student networking with employers. And for the employer, if this becomes a future employee, long-term, full-time, you've reduced the training cycle. So this co-op can come back to you and hit the ground running. So what are the requirements for a co-op program? And this applies to internships as well. The clearances must be obtained for the supervisor who will be supervising the intern or the co-op. You have to have a Pennsylvania background check completed. You have to have a Pennsylvania child abuse history clearance. And unless the supervisor has lived in Pennsylvania for more than 10 years, you also have to get an FBI clearance, which can take a couple or 3 or 4 or 6 weeks. So plan ahead. If the supervisor is serving as a volunteer mentor to the co-op, in other words, they're not getting a bonus or a stipend for doing this, and it is work, the fees for the clearances will be waived. And those clearances must be periodically renewed. It varies from 5 to 10 years. You have to pay a fair wage for a co-op. It cannot be less than a minimum wage. And according to ZipRecruiter, as of June 8th of 25, the average in Pennsylvania was $24.09, with the majority of the wages being between $14.28 and $25.09. The highest reported was $56.49, and I got to find out what that was. That may sound painful, but my local car wash is paying 18 bucks an hour for the kids who dry the cars off after they go through. So if you put that in perspective, these are not ridiculous wages. From an operational standpoint, you have to set the student schedule, you have to track their attendance, you have to ensure job safety, and the standard for that is higher if the student is a minor. You have to evaluate them monthly, and if they are a minor, you must follow the Pennsylvania child labor laws. And that's going to be a function of how old the co-op is. Finally, and I'm going to rip through this because you're going to get the PDF at the end. These are prohibited hazardous occupations for minors. They're on here. If it has an asterisk, there may be a special exception for a minor who is enrolled in an approved program. But in general, don't try to put a minor in any of these occupations. You will get dinged by the Labor Department. And do we have any questions before I move it on?
Thank you, Rebecca. I did put in the chat, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in, or we can get your questions to Rebecca too, if you think of something in a few moments or so.
Absolutely.
We just appreciate your time and your information that you have provided. Rebecca, it's been very helpful and, eye-opening to what the regulations are. So
My
thanks so
pleasure.
much. So next to present is Esther Barnes from Southwest Training Services to talk about their program involving youth. Thank you, Esther.
It's nice to be here, and thanks everyone for attending this. So I'm the youth program coordinator at Southwest Training Services, and we offer work experiences and internships. So our age range is from 14 to 24. For our younger youth, we have the work experiences where they're just beginning to learn the world of work. So we're trying to instill like good work habits, good work ethic, something for them to put on their resumes. So that we work with them on their resumes. We also have a financial literacy component for all of our summer workers and interns. So the high school students usually they'll work at like the high schools, the school districts. We have people working anywhere from like the Ivy Green to Chico Pacello, local places. The kids really enjoy those work experiences. They're younger, they're learning about earning money, learning money management. So that's been a positive for us. As far as our internships go, we work with a variety of employers. A lot of the employers are reaching out to us because we pay for the interns to work at their place of business. So we work with anywhere from like the DA's office to judges, the Chamber of Commerce. We work with engineering firms, manufacturing employers. We have like I said, a variety. Another place that we work with, United Way. What we do is when the youth participants come in and do their application, we sit down with them to see what their interests are. So we have a lot of business and marketing interns. So United Way has always been a very good work site for those students. The employers that we work with also, they give the youth participants work. It's just not sitting around, on the phone. They give them projects to complete. So it's been very beneficial. As far as like the DA's office, they actually get to go sit in on court hearings and along with the judge that we are also working with. So the youth participants get a valuable experience with us. We do pay them a wage of $10.35 an hour. They can work up to 32 and a half hours per week. They're under our workers' comp. And like I said, we are very strict with our work habits and work skills. So whenever they come in, they know what's going to be expected on the work site. So there's like a calling off procedure. There are work habits that they have to follow. So it's been a very good experience for our younger people from ages 14 to 24. Does anybody have any questions or comments? How do I engage students? Usually the schools will send us referrals. But if they are like in college, it's like word of mouth. Different employers reach out to us to say, hey, we have this person that we want you to interview to see if they would qualify for our funding, so we can pay their wage. So a variety of ways. Will parents need to provide transportation? Yes, the parents need to provide transportation for their youth to and from the work site. We do not provide transportation. Good
And
question.
Esther, you were talking previously about how either nonprofits who want to uh, get into the program, that they need to start applying in January, and also for the students to apply during that time frame, or the earlier the better? Or do you want to
Earlier,
address that?
yes, the earlier the better. We usually send the applications out to the school districts the end of February, beginning of March. But the college students, if they're aware of what we can do, they need to really reach out to us like in January, February, because the employers, from what I understand, and the employers that I work with, they already have chosen their interns very early on. So the earlier that the college students apply, the better. So if they want to come through us, they need to like contact us as soon as possible. If
And
it's
so does this student have a variety of potential, like maybe they want to work outside or do some
yeah,
indoors? Do they have
yes,
some type of scheduling priority or something?
yes. So they have a say into where they want to work. We just don't place them. We actually interview each youth to see where they're going to be a good fit. We don't want to set students up for failure or young people up for failure. That's very important. So I'm just going to give you an example. Working with some students that are very creative. Well, reached out to a couple of places, Wash Arts.
Yeah.
They're very good, they're new. So that was a good way for us to connect with them. And they took 3 of our interns. Ivy Green, they're creative, so they took a couple of people. But it all depends on what the youth is looking for. Some people like just want to work, they want to work outside. Um, that's fine. Some people like to work with children. So we have the Lemoyne Community Center that we're working with, and we also have like Wash PA Outdoors, local in this area.
Right.
Um, we really try to match them up correctly. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but because a student will say, hey, I want to do this, and then they find out, oh no, this isn't what I want to do, which is a good thing. Let's find out now that this is something in life that you don't want to do. So it's been very, very good for our young people
Mhm.
moving.
And also for a nonprofit or charity or organization that does this, because you could handle the payroll,
Yes.
or if the organization wants to, but is that correct?
Yes, we pay their wages. There are some employers that, especially like for interns, they want to pay a wage of like 14 or 15 an hour. So we'll do reimbursement for that employer of the 10.35 an hour up to 32 and a half hours a week at 6 weeks. So it is a very good savings for employers for them to partner up with us.
So there's a question, if a student finds a position with a company, can they bring the company to you? I guess if it's early enough, right?
That's correct, yes. So what I would do is I would reach out to that employer, tell them what we can do to assist them, and then we can have that as a work site. So each worksite also has to go through a worksite supervisor orientation, and they learn all of our rules and regulations. They have to follow the child labor laws. That's very important. So they do understand what they're also getting into during that meeting.
Well, I think that, we are learning the legal rules and regulations for interns, and just, it's just not a haphazard thing. I think
Oh, no.
it needs to be win-win for the student and the organization, but there are certainly things that must be followed. So,
You're absolutely correct with that. The work sites, especially look at today, it's like 96 degrees outside or 97. So the work sites are aware that the kids will need more breaks, hydration. So, they really work well with us because they want it to be a success also. So
great,
they do follow all of our rules and regulations.
great. Well, thanks so much for your work, Esther, and I think you'll maybe getting some calls from of our participants on this call. So,
Yeah, definitely. Please reach out to me, with any questions or comments.
so
Thank you.
thanks again. And now we have Mike Stowell and Dr. Vivian Felix from Washington and Jefferson College talking about their internship possibilities. Thank you, Mike and Vivian.
My name is Dr. Vivian Felix, and I work at Washington and Jefferson College as the Associate Dean of Students and the Director of the Center for Professional Pathways. And what we do in the center, Mike and myself, is to, with our team, support students' career and professional readiness throughout the arc of their four-year experience. So we're really here to talk about what colleges and universities are thinking about. What we have on this screen is a definition that most colleges use when thinking about what is an internship. And we really think of it as one of many forms of experiential learning that integrate the knowledge and theories learned in the classroom with practical application. So as a college, we're really looking for employer partners to work with students and support students' development across a range of industries. There are a lot of different internship definitions out there, and the understanding of what an internship is can vary based on the institution's priorities. So when you think about partnering with a college or university, it's important to understand their working definition, their roles and responsibilities, and their expectations of the internship experience for the student, as well as to what extent they will support you as the employer partner. In general, on the college level, we offer or facilitate the guidance of professional development with the employer partner directly. And we advocate for helping students to learn about the company, its procedures, and their expectations for what good work looks like and what it means to be a good citizen of that workforce. And in general, our underlying principle is that an internship's purpose is really to help students understand the industry, explore the industry, and connect to a particular industry through a particular or specific employer. So if we think about how to best support employers like you in thinking about framing an internship, there are a couple of questions that we find are really important. One of the first is, what knowledge and skills would a student learn or gain from that experience? So we advocate that the internship be mutually beneficial, and that students actually gain from that experience in some way. We also really encourage partners to think about who will supervise the interns. So what specific human will be responsible for working with that student and managing what that workflow looks like on a day-to-day basis. So also think about how much time do you or the team of people have available to support the student as well as supervise the student in turn. So we really like to remind partners that supervision and support are not exactly the same thing, and it might not be the same person. And that's really important to think about your time and energy allocation on site. We also work a lot with partners in thinking about what tasks and responsibilities will the students be responsible for? How will they contribute to the organization? We don't want to forget that we know this is an investment of your time and energy. And so we think about ways for you to do that successfully and efficiently and effectively. We also encourage you to identify who at the college or university is your liaison. So when a student is engaging with your site as an intern, there should be someone at the institution who you can reach out to share points of praise and provide feedback if things are not going as well as you would have expected. And how will you collaborate with them? It's usually best to have that identified at least through a verbal conversation and preferably in a document of some kind, whether that's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, a student to site internship agreement, or a more formalized affiliation agreement. And those terms do vary by industry. And finally, we always advocate for paid internships when we can and where feasible according to the ethics of the industry. But we know that standards can vary. So an important question is, how can you compensate the intern and what could that look like? So as a reminder, internships should not be free unpaid labor, and it should not replace the function of a full-time employee. But also recognizing that budgets are restrained for most of us, do think about where you can partner to compensate the intern and think about the range of how compensation would be appreciated. In addition to the funds that might get deposited in that student intern's bank account, things like access to professional development, access to mentoring, food stipends, all of that is often deeply appreciated by the student intern. So at this point, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mike.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Felix. So before we jump into credit bearing, I just want to reiterate colleges and universities, we do want to collaborate with you. Okay. There's an investment on our part to really connect the right students with the right opportunity. And we want to support their success after college, of course, but these experiences are often tied to academic credit as well. So with that in mind, most students will seek academic credit for at least one internship experience at W&J, and we have two credit-bearing options. So the first is of course a course itself, and that's going to be something associated with their program of study. There is a GPA requirement with that, and the credits can vary depending on how many hours they work. The second one is the practical experience requirement. Now, this is something that applies to students who enrolled in 2022. We do have a minimum of 40 hours tied to that. So that can be like hands-on work. And again, that's kind of utilizing whatever skills they have from the classroom and then their professional responsibilities. So you can kind of see how that ties into the definition of an internship that we provided at the beginning. And of course, they're going to be supervised by a mentor throughout that experience. On the institutional side, at WJ especially, students are going to work with their faculty advisor and also our center. And that's to really first identify the opportunity and then, of course, apply for that experience as well. We can kind of walk them through what that application process might look like, best practices, things like that. Not all internships are credit bearing. And so, for example, the cost with an internship credit, that could be a barrier for some students. As a best practice, there should always be someone you can contact at the college for support when you're working with a student intern in that situation. But we also believe that finances should not be a barrier for our students. Many students, and especially here at my W&J, we try to set aside funding to offset those costs associated with an internship. We offer several awards. We have an application window for that. We provide support to those students. And basically funding is awarded, based on the availability of funds and the quality of their application. So moving on. Okay, so some of this we've already mentioned, but as you start thinking about hosting a student intern, just to kind of reiterate some of the important parts of doing that, and I would say specifically, I would look at these as like best practices, right? So the first one is about your internship framework. Okay, so that involves some of the things we mentioned, defining the intern's role and responsibilities through a clear job description, right? So that ensures that you're attracting the right kind of candidate. And I think that's ensuring that expectations on both sides are aligned throughout that process. Figuring out where they're going to work, right? A suitable workspace for the intern, and assigning a dedicated supervisor or mentor through that process, and then outlining any kind of key projects they want to do. So that's certainly a part of it. Also thinking about like onboarding and selection procedures, right? So being transparent about what that interview process looks like, what that selection process looks like, what they can expect, some kind of formal agreement, right? Outlining expectations between the intern and the supervisor. So again, that's just kind of like setting everyone up for success, right? Ensuring that everyone's on the same page from the very beginning of the process. And then thinking about their support and professional growth. So, what kind of mentorship opportunities are going to be there to support their development? And then, do you have an orientation process in place, right? So, thinking about ways to introduce them to the organization itself, the people, important offices, and then kind of reiterating those expectations we mentioned. Engagement and visibility. So I look at this as a category that's really going to create that positive experience. And what it has to do with is sharing and celebrating the interns' contributions, right, across the organization. I think that can be done formally or informally. I think it's best when it's both, right? But the important thing is that you recognize their contributions. And I think it's encouraging to the intern. It's showing them that they have an impact, and really it's just helping create that overall positive experience. And then of course the last part of this process, and arguably like the most important piece, right, is to make sure you have a way to evaluate it for continuous improvement. You're going to be gathering feedback, you're going to be identifying those areas for improvement, and that can come in many different forms, right? It could be post-internship surveys. It could be formal, informal feedback opportunities, and not just from the intern, right? People involved in that process, maybe the supervisor or mentors involved in that as well. So just to kind of sum this up, if you're focusing on structure, the kind of support you're providing, and then, you know, continuous improvement, you can really create a meaningful experience, both for the student and your organization.
Well,
So,
thanks so much, Mike and Vivian. And I had a question, Mike, about just to be clear that you say there's opportunities for a student intern to be selected for some payment from the college, correct? But you
yes,
also would recommend that the organization, let's just say, have skin in the game, and they may pay a stipend as well. Is the internship with the college, is it through the college? Is there a specific amount of hours, or is it part of their semester? Or how does that work too? I guess I
Vivian,
asked you two questions.
yeah, Vivian may have more precise numbers on that. I'll let her.
Sure, happy to chime in. So we have an on-campus internship program, so W&J offices facilitating internships for students, but we also work closely with employer partners across the region for off-campus internships. The internship requirement varies based on what the student needs or what they want. So some students just want an internship, and so they can negotiate directly with the site themselves, and or with us. The students who are doing this for academic credit or academic recognition, so noted on their transcript, that would be the prex requirement for credit for counts as a course, essentially. The amount of hours does vary. So at a minimum, it would be 40 hours over the term for a practical experience requirement, and they would define the term. So maybe this is an intense project and you would complete 40 hours in 2 weeks. Maybe it's an extended project of a lower number of hours per week over a longer period of time. Students can complete a full-time internship in the summers. That's really all they would have time for. And then during the academic year, based on the number of credits, that will determine the number of hours they should complete. So if it's a 4-credit course, they would need to complete 150 hours total over a 15-week semester. If it's a 1-credit internship, it would be reduced to 37.5 hours over the course of the semester. And then 2 credits, 3 credits, it varies in between.
Well, there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunity for the students to benefit an organization and also continue either with their college credit or just have a straight summer internship. So a lot of variations there, and I'm
Absolutely.
sure you would welcome questions from any organizations that's listening.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much for your presentation. And then for a high school student perspective, Michael Milanovich from the Western Area Career and Technology Center will say a few comments. So thank you, Michael, for being with us today.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me. The nice thing about this is I've worked for a few years now with Esther. We have a great relationship. The high school at the high school age, utilizing those other agencies to help support our kids have been invaluable, and it's really a wonderful way to connect with the business partners that maybe we're not aware of, or vice versa, business partners that aren't aware of us yet. So thanks, Esther. We love you over there, and keep up the great work. We also, in coordination with CareerLink as well. So with Southwest training between Esther, Lisa Neal, Amy Gatz, all those great people working down in Washington County, it's really been beneficial for us. Mrs. Bowman did an amazing job of explaining things at the beginning. And the lucky thing for me is there's not a lot of differences. There's way more similarities between a co-op student, a internship, pre-apprenticeship, whatever it might be that you're looking at. We're all driving towards the same goal. The major difference is, as Mrs. Bowman pointed out, was child labor laws. Our kids, depending on how they're advancing through school, are generally second semester juniors in high school. So we're looking at kids that are of the general age of, some may be lucky enough at 15, but usually 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old students. The goal of co-op is for our kids to find competitive wage. So it definitely involves a competitive wage in a content area that aligns with what their training is at the Career Center. So for example, if a kid's in cosmetology, we want them working at a salon or something that's going to utilize the skills they're learning. They wouldn't be eligible to go work at McDonald's. Doesn't align with the content area that they're working in. So big step number one is it must align with what their training is. And of course, the goal is, as you mentioned earlier, this is a great way for kids at an early age to get their foot in the door in local industry, serving Washington County and the surrounding area. And it's a great opportunity for employers to get kids that are already coming with more than basic skills, depending on how long they've been in the program, and groom them to fit into their industry, into their business. You know, a lot of times we run into sometimes with more experienced employees who've maybe been around the block at different places. They go to a new place and the new place tells them how they'd like the job to be done. And first thing out of their mouth is, well, that's not how I learned how to do it. Or that's not the way I've always done it. The nice thing about our kids is you're getting them and you're training them and assisting us in giving them all those career-ready skills that fit right into what their expectations are. And as you also mentioned before, it's a great pipeline for that kid. You get them while they're in high school. They work as a co-op student. They're already in your environment. They're already learning your ups, downs, lefts, and rights. And then hopefully when they graduate, that transitions into full-time employment for them. So as I mentioned before, the similarities are really spot on. The only difference is some of the limitations due to child labor laws. But we cover all of that when we join on with partnerships with any of our local industry. We have a co-op coordinator who supervises what the child does in that work-related experience. They're a lead point for any of the industry partners to reach out to should there be any questions, comments, concerns regarding a kid that's in that placement. So there's always an adult who's checking in. They visit the workplace and see how the kid's doing. They correspond through email. They correspond through very minimal paperwork. Again, the goal is not to be more of a burden on a business to jump in this. The goal is to help each other. You know, we know that industry is starving for qualified people that have the skills to do the jobs. And the beautiful thing is we're talking about a wide array of different opportunities due to the things that we do offer at Western area. We have 15 different shops going from, what we call more of the inside shops like cosmetology, health assisting, sports management, culinary. But then we get into the things that are lesser known and even more difficult to find. We have an amazing machine shop. People are always looking for machinists. Our welding program is going through the roof. We have mechatronics, we have carpentry, electrical, HVAC, masonry. So our auto tech and our collision repair. So we have very much so a wide array of hands-on students that are learning the skills that are necessary in today's industry. And through the support of things like Southwest Training, Career Link, the LSA, our local government, and our local chambers, our kids are learning on today's industry standard equipment. Prime example, machining is one that they're starving for out there. And we're one of the few schools that still has a machining program. Thanks to the local share, one piece of equipment that our kids utilize in there costs $110,000. It's a $110,000 piece of equipment. And thanks to the local share, we got that piece of equipment. And our kids are learning, quite frankly, on a piece of equipment that might be more advanced than some of our local industry currently have. So once again, we're very proud that we are offering our kids hands-on training in much needed areas of industry. And we are always welcome for anybody to come and take a tour of our facility, take a look at our curriculum, look at the skills that our kids are learning. All of that is readily available. If an employer says to themselves, I'm interested, but I don't know what these kids are learning, I can give them the exact curriculum and they'll know exactly what skills our kids are walking out the door with. So reach out to us, come visit. We're more than happy to have anybody walk in.
Well, that's great to hear, Michael. We appreciate it very much. And as we asked Esther, so you have a student that is in a co-op, but now they're of the driving age, most likely, some of them. How does the transportation work to the site? And are they released from school from that period of time?
So another misconception that's kind of like an old school mentality is this is not work release. Work release is when a student has all the credits that they need in order to graduate. So rather than fill their schedule with something that they don't need or study halls, they allow that student to leave and go to work. With ours, it's very similar to what they're talking at the college level. This is a accredited program that our kids are receiving credit for doing co-op towards their career education. So as far as transportation goes, it is very beneficial that our students have reliable transportation. Again, we can't offer that transportation to those students. Most of our kids that are involved in co-op do have a driver's license. Students that don't have a driver's license have to prove that they have reliable transportation, whether it's parent, grandparent, sibling, somebody that is able to get them to and from their place of employment. So transportation is a hurdle as always. And as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, kids are less and less in a hurry to get their driver's license these days because they don't have to drive to see their friends anymore. They just pick up their phone and go to Snapchat.
True, true. And as you said before, though, if they're involved with co-op, there could be wages involved as well.
So that is actually part of co-op. Co-op does require that it's an agreement that there will be competitive wage. And as Mrs. Bowman pointed out, yes, that competitive wage is a sliding scale. If it is a student who's in restaurant trades, it's going to go work at a local restaurant or at a McDonald's or something like that, they're going to make the average wage of what those employees are making, which is usually around 16, 17 bucks an hour. If you're a welder, you're going to make significantly more than that because the competitive wage is significantly more than that. So that also is directly related to which industry the students are looking to go into. One of the questions I saw on the chat, if we have students that are interested in employment and they've found an employer that is willing to bring them on, that is the easiest possible way to do it, because then we know we have an industry partner that wants this child and we know that child wants to work there. So we actually then just initiate the co-op paperwork that we need to do to dot our I's and cross our T's, and away they go.
Mhm. So I'm sure you probably have some very interesting partners and what is your, can you tell us what's your most popular program?
So population-wise, student-related, this is my third year with Western Area CTC. We'll be starting the fourth year next year. When I came in the door, we had 380 students in grades 10 through 12. Next year, we're looking at 750.
Wow, what an increase.
We've had
Good
a
for
little bit of
you.
growth. Yes. We've worked hard to change the culture and climate there. We've worked hard to better communicate with our school districts, our local industry partners, make them aware of what our goal is and what we're providing for our kids. With that being said, welding is full every year. Auto tech is full every year. Electrical is full. Carpentry is full. Health assisting is full. We're fast approaching that every one of our shops are getting to capacity. So it's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're so glad to hear that. And these are very practical jobs that were created that the young people going out can immediately then be hired, right? They have all
Absolutely.
the skills necessary for those positions. Okay. Well, thanks so much. And now we can open it up for other general questions. If someone has anything they'd like to say, if you want to raise your hand or put something in the chat.
So I will put in the chat for everybody my contact information if they would like to reach out. We'll make that as easy as possible.
Okay.
And shooting us an email is the simplest way. And
There you go.
there we go. And we can make arrangements for anything you like. In addition to that, we also have beautiful facilities that people might want to utilize to do some of their own trainings or refreshers. We have a large meeting space. Our culinary department does catering. About once a month, Mark West so kindly gets about 500 box lunches from us that our kids prepare and ship over there. So there's a lot of great opportunities I'm sure people haven't really even begun to think about in partnering with our Career and Tech Center. We're centrally located. We support all 9 of our school districts in Washington County. And we're more than happy to talk about any opportunities that share the betterment of our community and our school.
Well, that's great to know, Michael. We appreciate it very much. And I think with Mike and Vivian, we can talk about the great opportunities at W&J as well, and Esther's program. And is there any particularly popular areas for you, Mike or Vivian? The students seem to be, each one kind of creates their own path, but do you see any trends or?
So our students will complete 2 programs of study. So they will complete a major, double major, or a major and a minor, or a major, minor, minor. So we see students really interested in cross-functional projects. I would say by programs of study, our top 4 would be pre-health professions, business administration, pre-law, and then science-based research. And that's pretty steady. We're seeing a growing number of students interested in the arts. But really, a lot of our students are just curious about what the world of work looks like. And I find they struggle to think about how can I leverage my liberal arts degree? And employer partners also struggle with what does a liberal arts degree student offer to us? And so a lot of our work as staff is to really like bridge that gap in understanding and just talk about the value of being a good employee and a good citizen of the workplace.
Right. And W&J just last fall and launched its nursing program and
We did.
is looking into other health sciences that the graduates are ready or already are working
They
throughout their
are, they
programming.
are.
Yes.
all of our students will complete at least one internship in order to graduate. And on average, students are completing 3 work-based experiences, whether that's an externship, a job shadowing, and a more traditional internship.
Wow. That's a lot and very practical knowledge, even for a liberal arts degree, right?
It really is. And I like to remind folks that as a college, we're thinking about the student value, right? Their development, their professional readiness. But this is also a way to think about soft recruitment. And it's a way to learn what the newest application of the skills look like. Learning and being a lifelong learner is important. And by leveraging the value of an intern, you get that up-to-date knowledge in a different way.
Yes. Mike, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think a lot of it's already been said, but I will add that we have a lot of workshops focused on soft skill development, in addition to some of the more specific ones. Tailoring your resume, right? Those kind of boilerplate things, and so we look at that, an internship opportunity for a student as a way to kind of build on those skills, and so they can kind of use their liberal arts education in a lot of ways as sort of a foundation for that. So we're very focused on those things. We also recognize for students who particularly are applying for their first internship, right? They're not going to have the same kind of experience that maybe a junior or senior has who maybe has 1 or 2 internships under their belt. So we really try to focus on translating those things for an employer and through the resume, through their cover letter. And so that's, for me, been one of my biggest interactions with students is getting them to understand those soft skills. And then again, just using that internship to kind of build on those things, right? Not just the content knowledge that they're getting, but also professionalism, their ability to communicate, time management, all those other things.
Yes, well, thank you. And Esther, I was glad to hear you said that the students go through a financial literacy program as well.
That's correct.
Can you talk a little bit about what that entails?
So we talked to our youth participants about smart spending and just give them tips on budgeting, how to look at their paycheck, like the taxes that are taken out. So we really try to prepare the students, especially the younger ones. This is going to, sometimes this is their first paycheck. They don't understand about taxes. They want to go spend their paycheck on something. So we talk about, how important it is for credit, budgeting, smart spending. We give them tips and information on that. So yeah. But I also wanted to Mike Milinovich. So we have a few of your students that are working this summer. And I have to tell you that they are very prepared for the world of work. We have some students working at physical therapy places. The physical therapists really like them. They're prepared. We have somebody working this summer at Bud Bear, and that's a tough crew up there. They're older and their work ethic is a little different. The student that we sent up there are very prepared. So you guys are really doing a nice job preparing the youth for work.
Thank you, Esther.
Always good to hear, right? That students are doing well. I'm sure you can say that, Vivian and Mike, as well, that the students are well prepared for their experience. Well, there's no other questions or remarks. I just want to thank all the panelists for taking the time to present on this particularly important issue. The next session in our nonprofit leadership and engagement series will be next Monday, actually, June 30th, for a public relations in-person workshop. If you would like to attend, please reach out to me directly if you have not already signed up for it. Thanks again to all those who participate in the session today and for all the presenters for an outstanding topic. Have a great day. Try and stay cool.